Chapter 13. The crunch of tires on the gravel driveway made us all sit up straighter. It had been hours and I was waiting for Devon to come home. The men were prepared in case it wasn't him. A knock sounded on the front door, and Nickie was already standing next it, waiting. I stayed on the couch, my feet propped up on the table in front of me. Gavin stood between Nickie and me, as if he was standing guard in case whoever was here got past the door-filling bulk of my second enforcer. "Is Nickie here?" I heard a female voice ask. It was a familiar voice, but I couldn't place it offhand. "She is, but I can't let you in," Nickie said. "I just wanted to chat for a little while," the familiar voice replied. "I'm sorry. I have orders that no one gets in until the Theron gets back." It dawned on me where I knew the voice from. "Bailey? Is that you?" I dropped my head backwards off the edge of the sofa, trying to look around Gavin and get a look at her. Nickie stepped to one side so I could see but held an arm across the doorway so Bailey couldn't come in. "Hey girl, I just wanted to talk." She gave me a friendly smile. I heard. I smiled back. Devon's out on pack business right now, and he's not comfortable with anyone but his guards around right now. "I'll call you later, and we can set up a time to get together." She looked at Nickie, then at Gavin for several seconds before looking back to me. "All right, I'll wait for you to call, but don't make me wait too long, okay?" "No problem." She flashed me a bright smile, gave my enforcers one last leery look and turned back toward her car. Nickie closed the door and watched out the front window until I could no longer hear the engine on her car. When he turned back toward Gavin and I, a frown on his face. "Why don't I know her? She smelled like pack, but I've never seen her before." "She's new in town," I said. "I met her at Alexis's a week or so back. We hit it off. She's been here a couple times. Devon's met her. We've become friends." Nickie nodded absently, but the unhappy look remained. "It's no big deal, Nickie. I know you're just doing your job. I'll explain to her later. I'm sure she'll understand." "It's not her I'm worried about," he said. "Not exactly." "What do you mean?" I asked. "How much do you know about her?" He turned to look at me. "I mean really know, not just that she's told you." I was silent for a moment. "Not much. I do know that Bill's met her and accepted her into the pack. I'm sure he didn't do that without some information." "I'm sure he has what she told him, but did he confirm it?" he asked. I frowned. Why was he this concerned about her? "I don't know. I've never asked what it takes to move from one pack to another." "Why are you so concerned about it all of a sudden?" He turned away from the window and met my look. "Because it's possible she's a plant." "A plant?" I had no clue what he meant by that. "A spy put here by someone who wants information on the pack. Say Bauer or Anderson. Timing's fishy to me, especially that she became friends with you so quickly." That had never occurred to me. I first met her at the clinic. She'd been hit by a car in wolf form and was brought in while I was there to see Alexis. I probably wouldn't know her if not for that. Gavin nodded, confirming my story to Nickie. That would have been very difficult to engineer, since I hadn't planned to visit her, just decided to go over on our lunch break one afternoon. I continued. Nickie looked at me a moment longer, then nodded. "All right." He moved away from the window and went back to the other sofa where he'd been before she pulled in. It hadn't occurred to me that the men no longer in town might have people relaying them information. It really should have, because it's exactly what they had done for Brandon. Some days I wondered where my brain had gone. I was going to have to pay more attention to Devon's job and pack business. I'd been too absorbed in my own troubles lately. Picking up the remote, I restarted the film we had been watching and continued to wait for Devon to come home. It was late when Devon finally made it home. Dealing with Weston and Troy had taken longer than I'd thought it would. I was exhausted and really needed sleep, but I couldn't stand to go to bed alone. Even with our mental connection restored, I knew I would only toss and turn until Devon was beside me. Instead, I stayed up watching several films with Gavin and Nickie while we waited. I was losing the battle with sleep, nodding off on the couch, when I heard the growl of a truck engine. A few minutes later, gravel crunched in the front drive, and I hoped he was home. I thought about getting up, but exhaustion won, and I lay on the sofa and waited to see who it was. Gavin and Nickie both stood, Nickie going to the door and looking out the window while Gavin checked the rest of the house for what seemed like the millionth time. I'd become so used to their rounds that I didn't stir. When I heard the back door open, I paused the film and pushed myself up until I was sitting and waited. I didn't have to wait long. A couple moments later, Devon appeared in the archway leading to the hall. "How are you, baby?" he asked. "Fine, but I've been here doing nothing all day." "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm all right." He looked tired, older than he had when I'd left him that morning. "You learn anything?" "Nothing worthwhile." He shook his head. "I need to debrief these guys and take a shower. You about ready for bed, or you want me to come back in here?" Voices in the kitchen distracted me. There was Nickie and Gavin's, which I expected, but I didn't recognize the third. "Who's here?" I asked, tilting my head to one side. "Raphael brought me home. He's gonna stay here tonight." I frowned. We'd never kept a bodyguard around when Devon was home. "We were both drugged and taken from this house. I want someone with you who's awake at all times until I'm sure you're safe. I'm too tired for that to be me tonight." I frowned. It hadn't occurred to me he might want an enforcer to stay overnight. Not that I really minded. The idea of someone staying awake to make sure no one came in and tried to hurt us again sounded pretty good to me. I'm give out. I'm ready for bed whenever you are. I'm kinda surprised you waited up for me. I couldn't take being alone in the bed. It was better out here with the guys. I got up and went to him, burying my face against his shoulder as his arms came around me. "I don't smell very good, babe." I ignored the scent of dust and sweat on him, looking for the familiar smoky odor. "You smell like home." I took one more deep breath, then released him so he could go talk to the men. He kept one arm around me and pulled me against his side as he headed for the kitchen where the men had gathered. "So, things are set for the night," Devon said, to the three men looking at him for orders. "You two are off duty for the next," he looked at the clock on the stove, 10 hours. "I'll expect you back here at 8 to relieve Raphael. The rest of the enforcer team will be here at 9 to discuss the events of the last 2 days." He looked down at me. "We'll meet in the house if that's all right with you. My office isn't big enough for the whole team." "That's fine, but I can't guarantee I'll have enough food cooked for everyone." Normally, I would get up early and make sure I had a full spread laid out, but I just didn't have it in me tonight. I suspected I'd sleep until the guys got here to relieve Raphael, or later. Devon looked back at Gavin and Nickie. "Stop and pick up donuts, pastries, whatever, it will have to do. Let me know what it costs and I'll see you get reimbursed." He pulled me against him in a one-armed hug. "They're all taken care of." He looked back to the men. "Raphael, you've got the night shift. Don't hesitate to wake me if you hear something. Now, I'm gonna shower and go to bed. I'm exhausted." He started to turn for the bedroom, but I didn't move. "Make yourself at home," I said to Raphael. "There's food in the fridge, and the remote for the living room screen is on the coffee table." Devon looked at me with lifted brows, silently asking if I was ready. "Night, guys, I'll see you tomorrow." I looked at the two men who had been my guards all afternoon, then up at Devon and nodded. His hand slid down my arm until he reached my hand, where he wove his fingers with mine and tugged me after him as he headed into the bedroom. I woke slowly the next morning. I lay there a moment enjoying the familiar comfort of my bed and pillow, so different from how I'd woken the day before. Rolling onto my back, I stretched, pushing blankets and sheets away as I moved. "There's a tempting sight," Devin said, stepping into the room from the adjoining bathroom. He was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt. I knew he had to be planning on putting something else on before going out. He never wore just an undershirt. He was one of the few men I knew who wore undershirts. I assumed it was a leftover from the time he'd spent in the army. "What?" I asked. I'd been distracted by watching him and forgotten what he'd said. "I said that you're a tempting sight." He leaned over the bed and gave me a soft kiss. I wrapped my arms around him and tried to pull him down on the bed beside me. "Come join me then." "I wish I could." He pulled away and stood again. "But Gavin and Mickey will be here shortly, and the rest of the team won't be far behind. I've got to finish getting dressed so I can fill them all in." "Can I come?" "Sure." He looked me up and down again. "But I'd prefer you put some clothes on first. I don't want to have to kill my entire team for looking at you." He gave me a smoldering look. "Clothes are dressed? What's the difference? Do you want me presentable to the world or just covered?" I asked as I climbed out of bed. "Wear your sweats if that's what you want. It's your home, be comfortable. I just don't want them leering at what's mine." He wrapped one arm around my middle and pulled me against his taut body before planting a scorching kiss on me. I melted into him, my body went pliant as my world narrowed to our bodies and mouths. He let the kiss continue for a couple minutes, then pulled away. "I don't want to keep everyone waiting." "Why not?" I grinned, reaching for him again. "You do realize that everyone would know what we were doing in here, right? With our enhanced hearing and sense of smell, there's no way we could keep them from knowing." That cooled my fire a little, but not entirely. "I'm willing to risk it," I said, just to get a rise out of him, but I didn't reach for him again. He laughed. "Get some clothes on. I'll make sure the coffee's on." Watching him go, I couldn't help but notice how well his jeans fit. The way they outlined his butt made me want to pull him back and entice him to stay. I couldn't help but smile when I realized he was still barefoot. I don't know if it was something he'd always done or if it had developed since he'd started shifting, but he rarely wore shoes unless he was leaving. He'd even made trips out to the office barefoot, at least he had before it had gotten quite so cold. I took a deep breath and let it out before pulling a comfortable pair of sweats from the drawer and heading for the bathroom.